So, it's official. The Beekeeper 2 is happening, and Jason Statham is all set to return. This time, though, there'll be a bit of a shakeup behind the camera with a brand new director stepping in. The first Beekeeper movie, which hit theaters early in 2024, introduced audiences to Statham's character, Adam Clay, a retired beekeeper operative who embarks on a ruthless mission of revenge after someone close to him is scammed. That movie, which also starred Emmy Raver-Lampman, Jeremy Irons, and Josh Hutcherson, was generally well received. In fact, it turned out to be a surprise hit at the box office, naturally sparking plenty of buzz about the possibility of a sequel. Now, thanks to a new report from Deadline, we know that Miramax and Statham are officially reuniting for the Beekeeper 2. Interestingly, David Ayer, who directed the first film, won't be back in the director's chair. Instead, they brought on Timo Tjahjanto, known for his blood-pumping action work in films like The Night Comes for Us, to helm the sequel. Kurt Wimmer, who wrote the original screenplay, is also returning, which should help keep the sequel closely tied to the style and tone of the first film. Meanwhile, there's talk of Ayer sticking around as a producer, keeping him involved in some capacity. Filming is expected to start this fall, and Amazon MGM Studios, who handled domestic distribution for the first movie, is reportedly the top pick again. The fact that Tjahjanto is taking over the director's seat says a lot about the direction they might be going. Sure, there was a huge reason why the first movie got those positive reviews and box office success. But Tjahjanto is no rookie when it comes to crafting thrilling action. His resume includes intense Indonesian action films like The Night Comes for Us, The Big Four, and most recently The Shadow Strays, 2024, which performed well. He's also already on Hollywood's radar with Nobody 2 starring Bob Odenkirk. So, The Beekeeper 2 feels like a natural next step for him to show off what he can do. Even though fans might be a little bummed that The Beekeeper 2 won't be another Statham-Ayer team-up, the two clearly still have a strong working bond. In fact, Statham is starring in Ayer's next project, an action thriller titled A Working Man, set to hit theaters in March 2025. That means even if Ayer isn't directing the sequel, his creative fingerprints might still show up behind the scenes, especially if he officially signs on as a producer. So what does all this mean for the Beekeeper 2 itself? Having Tjahjanto at the helm could actually be a great thing. His style, super kinetic and brutal, could mesh well with Statham's physical, no-nonsense approach to action. It might even surpass the original when it comes to sheer intensity and spectacle. And since Wimmer is returning to write the script, there's a good chance the sequel will retain the same dark humor and pulpy self-awareness that made the first one stand out. The original Beekeeper pulled in an impressive $152 million globally on a roughly $40 million budget. So it's no surprise the studio wanted to return to this world. After all, while Statham pumps out action movies on a pretty steady basis, not all of them hit the mark. But the Beekeeper felt like it knew exactly what it was: over the top, slightly absurd, but totally entertaining. It leaned into its wild premise, mixing brutal fight scenes with tongue-in-cheek humor, and audiences clearly appreciated that. If the sequel can keep that same vibe, it should be in good shape. Tjahjanto might actually be the perfect person to take over. His previous films show a knack for choreographing inventive, hard-hitting action scenes, which pairs nicely with Statham's style. There's still a bunch of open questions, though, like which supporting cast members might return, or whether the sequel will dig deeper into the secretive beekeeper organization Adam Clay once worked for. Looking at the story side of things, there's still so much about Clay's past that remains unexplored. In the first movie, we see him as an unstoppable force, retired, yet still able to outmaneuver and outfight just about anyone. He takes down teams of mercenaries, sneaks into heavily guarded estates, and wins brutal one-on-ones without breaking a sweat. Because of that, it feels odd that retirement would be his final chapter. There's clearly more story to tell. If The Beekeeper 2 dives into why Clay left the organization, it could open up all kinds of interesting possibilities. Maybe there's an age rule baked into the Beekeeper's code. Or maybe something happened that made him walk away. The first film deliberately kept the group shrouded in mystery. What exactly do they do? Who runs them? Why do they exist? All of that leaves juicy narrative threads for a sequel to explore. It could even give audiences more insight into how Clay really feels about the organization and whether he has any lingering issues or unfinished business with them. There's also the broader franchise potential to think about. The first Beekeeper laid down some intriguing groundwork that could easily support a whole series. Imagine future films expanding on the rules of the Beekeepers, introducing rival organizations, or revealing new operatives with their own motives. Maybe Clay isn't the only ex-beekeeper struggling with ghosts from his past. Perhaps new recruits pop up, eager to learn from the legend himself. It could even evolve into a globe-trotting saga following beekeepers around the world. And since Giganto is known for pushing action sequences to the limit, there's a strong chance the sequel might feature even more outrageous set pieces, which could be exactly what Statham needs right now. Over the years, some of his sequels haven't quite lived up to expectations, at least in terms of box office returns. But The Beekeeper 2 offers a real opportunity to break that pattern and deliver something that outdoes the original. It'll also be interesting to see how the humor plays out. Part of what made the first movie work was its self-awareness. It winked at the audience, fully aware of how exaggerated it was. That balance of gritty violence and sly humor is tricky, but if they can pull it off again, it could cement the Beekeeper series as one of Statham's most memorable runs. So, even though there's still a lot of unknowns, like the official plot, new characters, and which familiar faces will return, it's hard not to be optimistic. Between Giganto's flair for kinetic action, Wimmer's steady hand on the script, and Statham diving back into the role of Adam Clay, there's every reason to believe The Beekeeper 2 could not only live up to the first movie, but maybe even surpass it. And who knows, if it does well enough, we might be looking at The Beekeeper 3 a few years down the line, diving even deeper into Clay's shadowy world. And that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.